Okay, so we're going to wait for people to come on in so we can talk about the last book of the N.K. Jemisin read-along. Yay! All right, I'll just wait for people to hop in, say hi. Let me know what you thought of The World We Make by N.K. Jemisin, the second book and final book in the Great Cities duology. Let me know. Hope you guys also had a really good December with any of the holidays that were going on over the course of the month. Mine were really good. And the first week definitely so far is going pretty okay. Went back to work here on Wednesday, and it was interesting, to say the least. So, double check everything. Okay, should be running smoothly. So if you are here, let me know by telling me what you thought of The World We Make. I personally loved it. If you guys saw my N.K. Jemisin World We Make reading vlog that I came out with, you would know that I really liked it. And I actually think I liked it more than The City We Became, to be completely honest. So for a lot of reasons, I think specifically, I also just feel like this is probably my favorite series of hers, but the 5th season is still my favorite book by her. But I do think that The World We Make came very close to it's in the top 5 for sure. I'm fairly certain. So let me know what you guys ended up thinking about it. We can talk, hang out. Dropping my glasses, trying to clean them and failing miserably to do so. But yeah, I hope you guys had a great holiday time. I know it's very stressful for a lot of people, so I totally don't blame you if it was still very stressful for you and you maybe didn't enjoy it as much because of that. But today we're also going to be talking about what the read-along for 2024 is going to be, which if you saw my announcement video for that in December, then you would know it's going to basically be The Witcher. So we're going to talk a little bit about that, what to expect going into the next year for that read-along. And I just feel like I made my smudge even worse. Ever clean your glasses and then realize that you probably just made the smudges even more distracting and annoying than they already were? That's what just happened to me. And I think I actually have scratches on my glasses, which that's fantastic. Love that for me. It is like right in my eye line. So anyway, so The City We Became and The World We Make, a duology that I think was very polarizing for a lot of people when it came to N.K. Jemisin. I think mostly the biggest reason that I noticed in terms of what I thought would possibly be a reason is because it's so different from what NK has come out previously. You know, NK, we realized over the course of the reading of her, she does a little bit of sci-fi, a little bit of fantasy, but does tend to lead more toward the fantasy aspect of things. Whereas with The City We Became and The World We Make, we found that it was a lot more sci-fi based than anything else. And I think that maybe for a lot of people, especially that were already fans of her, that was a huge thing. Otherwise, I didn't see personally in this series any reason why there would be any hatred toward it or any like dislike toward it. I think maybe it's just the biggest thing could be that people just didn't vibe with the writing style. If they were new to her, they didn't really see, you know, anything of value maybe with what she was writing. Even though there is a lot to talk about in terms of the story overall itself from book 1 and book 2, that things that kind of like transferred over, things that were expanded more on, that kind of thing. And I will say, like I said in my video that I did for The World We Make, I did feel that the ending was a little lackluster in some ways, but I still really liked it. I still love the way that it was, you know, what was going with it, like what NK was trying to do with the ending of the story and ultimately the ending of the storyline. Or maybe not even so much an ending, but essentially ending that piece of it kind of thing. So I think personally, the way that it ended was lackluster in the sense that I kind of had expected there to be this big fight, at the end. Most of us, I think, were probably thinking, oh, there's going to be some big fight at the end between, all the cities and, the White Lady and all these things. And that didn't happen, we saw. So what I found, though, to be interesting is that what NK kind of, I think, did with this ending is showcase that this is an ongoing battle. The idea of fighting against things like xenophobia, racism, homophobia, any kind of fight against someone that is considered an other, let's say, that fight is constantly ongoing. And that, I think, is why she kind of left the ending a little bit less impactful and battle oriented than what I think most people would probably think about with her. Because I think that honestly, it lends to the idea that in our contemporary society, those are still ongoing battles. They are going to be ongoing battles for some time until we reach a point where in society, we no longer view those kinds of people as other, whether it is based in homophobia, racism, xenophobia, whatever the case may be. And I really appreciated that that was kind of I think the main point of the way that she ended it, as opposed to having it be this big battle scene, even though that was, I think, what I was expecting and was let down in a sense because I didn't get that. But overall, I really liked the way that it ended. Now, a lot of things, obviously, that we kind of talked about the last time when it came to the city we became specifically is the fact that this is a story that talks a lot about the different phobias that are involved in contemporary society: transphobia, xenophobia, Islamophobia, racisms, or other isms, if you will. And we learn very quickly that one of our main characters, Island, is this kind of personification of the city of Staten Island, where it is more conservative, it is more white centered, it is more Republican centered, if you will, and how that essentially is showing the more villainous side of things, whereas everyone else that is involved in the city of New York, Bronca, Brooklyn, to some extent, Manny, Queens, they all have different things about them that essentially are what we consider, a little bit more of, not necessarily, I would say, like a cultured kind of person, but something about them is different and would be considering them to be an other of sorts. Manny is obviously like a person of color, so there's that involved. Bronca is not only a person of color, but also is gay. Also, you have Queens, who is not only a person of color, but is not necessarily an immigrant, but she is a student on a student visa in New York City. And then you have Brooklyn, who is known not only as a politician and a person of color, but also a woman, person of color, and was a rapper previously before becoming a politician, where she wrote a lot on the things that she dealt with growing up, where there was a lot of the isms and, phobias that there was in society in New York specifically. Island, though, being a white character and coming from a very white-centered, very Republican-centered kind of area, became kind of what we saw as a personification of that area, where there's a lot of fear about the other people that are from, the city of New York, as opposed to the island. What we saw is in the first book, in The City We Became, Island, she was terrified of going to the city because her father had really instilled in her that there's a lot of bad things in the city, not just, crime, but people in particular. There are a lot of bad people there that commit those crimes, but also are just evil intended, and they have this kind of really bad energy, if you will, about them. And so Island, for most of her life, was afraid of going on the ferry from the island to the city. And you see that she becomes so enraptured with the White Lady so easily, because the White Lady seems to be the only person that really understands her, is able to kind of see things in the way that she does, and really kind of exemplify more of what this island area is kind of pursuing in terms of the thought patterns and the isms that are within that part of society. And this is not something that is exclusive to New York itself and New York City and, Staten Island. This is something obviously that we see in various areas of the United States. We see these types of isms and phobias rampant throughout every part of the United States, various parts of the world as well. We see it happening, and we try to, I think, in a lot of ways, stop it from happening or promote, the people that are doing the right things and not perpetuating these violent kinds of and harmful kinds of things, that they're not, causing these things to happen. Island does not really understand that everything she's been taught has been done from a place of perpetuating hate and perpetuating prejudice and evil intentions, and essentially, in a lot of ways, too, being more harmful. And I don't think that deep down Island is a person that means to be harmful. We see a lot of, in the world we make specifically, Island having this internal battle where there are some things that the White Lady starts to do in terms of working with the up and coming, mayoral electee, the person running for the mayoral position of New York City. There are some things that happens with the White Lady in order to get this person further into the election and really push them to become the mayor, that Island starts to realize is not something that she agrees with. There are a lot of things that she thinks are way too far off base for what she thinks. And so I think that what with this book we see, The World We Make, is that obviously Island has some aspects about her that don't necessarily redeem her, but I do think they are things that delve into her character more and make her not only more fleshed out as a character that we are reading, but as a person makes her a little bit more nuanced, where she's not entirely so far right like the people that she grew up with and her family, but she's also definitely not somebody that is able to see people in the way that they are. And she's very much painted over by the things that she grew up with, the things that she experienced growing up. And I appreciate that in this book, she doesn't necessarily, like I said, get redeemed. I think that if Island was to be fully redeemed in this book, it would not be even a believable story, in the sense of having to suspend your disbelief with the magic and the science fiction that was involved in it. As a character, as thinking of her as an actual person, you don't just see things that are bad and then all of a sudden change your entire perspective of things. The things that you change your perspective on take time, based on new experiences that you have and new things that you are exposed to, right? None of us come to our perspective of things immediately. We don't just come out of the womb having all of these thoughts and, dispositions and, prejudices of any kind, whatever they may be. We learn them not only through our environment, but we also learn them from other people and, the people that we grew up with, but also, what we are taught in things like school and family dynamics and things like that. And when we have something that comes up that challenges a lot of the things that we've been taught, it doesn't always change our perspective right away. It's something we have to ruminate on. It's something we have to really look into and really, I think, cultivate our own perspective on it, our own thoughts on it. How do we perceive it? How do we, look at this thing and say, what our opinion is on it? Do we do the research that is needed for something, in this regard? If it's something to do with, racism, how do we look at ourselves and how we've been doing certain things, and why are we doing certain things that are, maybe in a racist way or in a prejudiced way of some kind? How do we, look into ourselves and see what we're doing and how much of what we've experienced has played into that? And this is something that's a lifelong thing. As a white woman myself, I am not, I'm not, how do I want to say this? I am not essentially, I'm not guilty of doing bad things. When I was a lot younger, I, grew up in a white predominant area like Island did. I knew very, very few people of color. My community did not really have any people of color at all. Not Asian, not Black, not really any Latino or Latina, very few if there was any. And that was maybe the most of what we had in terms of anything other than white in my community. And that's not to say that necessarily like that was, something that made me into a bad person or anything. I'm just thinking that, it wasn't something that I understood how that affected my perspective of things until I got into college. And when I got into college, I was able to move away from this community and really expand my horizons and meet all kinds of different people. And I learned a lot about myself, and I learned a lot about how some things that were happening in my community and something that were being taught in my community and the people that I interacted with, day to day, how they in some ways were extremely hurtful to other people, anything like that. And so when I was in college, I started to really then kind of start creating my own opinion of things, started creating my own perspective of things. I started talking to different kinds of people from different backgrounds, as opposed to where I grew up, where it seemed like everybody had pretty much the same background for the most part. And it was when I was in college that I started to understand things like racism and homophobia and transphobia, because again, in my small town community, we didn't have a lot of those things, or at least it wasn't something that I was aware of until I was much older, because I was incredibly ignorant. I was incredibly, sheltered in a lot of ways about a lot of different things. And I think that with Island, this is very much the same case. However, it does not excuse any of the things that she does. It does not excuse the choices that she made out of prejudice and an unwillingness to learn. I think, though, that it's important to understand that every person that goes through and reads this needs to understand and check their privileges and check their prejudices, because you don't understand necessarily why you do certain things until you start to really look at yourself and look at the way that you were brought up and look at the way that you were taught things. And I think that for Island, this is something that she never got that chance to be able to do. And it wasn't until this moment in the world we make that she really starts to, I think, in a lot of ways, delve into that. And really, I think in a lot of ways, start recognizing some of the more harmful things she does. And again, I appreciate that she's not fully redeemed in this book. We start to see her begin the journey of understanding her prejudices and her isms and her phobias that she has, and understanding why it is she thinks the way that she does and what she needs to start understanding in order to, be able to have the friends and the community that she's wanting. Because the community that she wants, she's not really well liked in, because of the fact that she is unable right now to view herself as anything other than top tier. I'm better than everybody else because I'm white and because I am cis and because I am, straight, all these different things. And the people that she wants to be involved with, they don't really want anything to do with her because of her negativity and because of her isms and prejudices and phobias and all these things that she is unwilling to unpack and unwilling to delve into and understand why they are not good. Why are they, very harmful for the people that she wants to be around? I do believe that, again, the way that the story ends is about the fact that this is an ongoing battle. This is a thing that is going to constantly be brought back to the surface. I mean, the whole main plot of the story that we see is about somebody that is very much in a Donald Trump-esque kind of light, where they are looking to make America great again, where essentially they are looking to ostracize all of the people that are not white, that are not cis, that are not this, that are not that don't meet this criteria of lists. And essentially what they are trying to do is essentially like whitewash everything into a beautiful, perfect utopia that white people of various generations have tried to do over multiple times. And essentially we've learned that that doesn't necessarily work, and yet it continues to happen because there are a lot of white people who are very much still of the mindset that they can control everything because they believe they are the majority, when today, it's not so much the case. I think in a lot of ways, white people are becoming the minority, and that is not necessarily a bad thing. White people have had power for way too long. It is time for a whole new set of things to go on. And I really appreciate how this story talks about how that's going to be an ongoing battle. It might not be this generation where we will see a lot of these changes happen. I am fortunate to have lived in a time and in a generation where I've been able to see some progress of things. I'm fortunate to live in a time where women are able to vote, women are able to own a credit card, they're able to own their own cars and have a job, and all these different things that people from my past, my heritage, they've, fought for these things. I'm fortunate to live in that time, but I'm also fortunate to live in a time where I am seeing more progress. It has been in my lifetime that I've seen that gay marriage has been, legalized. I have seen, the things that have happened in society for people of color and for those that are also native to the Americas, how they have been, steadily getting progressively, more rights and more things that they should have had previously, because they are no different than white people. They just have a different skin color or a different upbringing than a typical white person does. And I've been fortunate to be able to see these things start to unfold and start to come to the surface, but they are things that are going to still, to this day, be something that are ongoing battles. I mean, one of the biggest ongoing battles for women in particular is the pay gap between us and men. And that has been an ongoing battle for years, for decades, and is going to continue to be, because there are still people who believe that women are not able to maintain the same pay as other people. And, there's so many other things that are going to get developed. There's still so much homophobia and transphobia and Islamophobia that has been rampant for literal decades. And it is going to take probably more decades and more generations before we end up in a place where we're going to have what I would consider to be the perfect utopia of everyone being able to live harmoniously and live in a world where you don't have to worry about your skin color, whether or not you love someone that is of the same sex as you, if you decide that you're going to transition from one gender to the next, or you don't ascribe to a gender. It's going to be generations from now where hopefully we will see those things be the more norm and society being okay with those things. Whereas, they're so new, especially within my generation. These are things that I did not know about growing up when I was a kid. It wasn't until my adult years that these things started actually becoming, things that came to the surface, even though they've been around for thousands of years, if not more. But it's been interesting to see how this book has really not only looked at the way in which society is still needing to grow, but how we have really, in some ways, grown a lot in the last 200, 300 years alone. I just really appreciate how this story really made me be, I think, appreciative for what has happened so far in our society to be where we are, but also really makes me feel like we have so much more to do. We have so much more work to do. We have so much more, people to, get the rights that they deserve. We have so many people that are still unable to live in a way that is not paycheck to paycheck because of whatever reason. We have still a lot of people who are homeless. We have a lot of veterans who still are, looked at poorly if they have things like PTSD or any kind of thing that is causing them to live in a way that is not within normal means, and becoming homeless and being sick and dying. And there's so many things that we still need to work on that I could go for hours on it. So I'm going to cap that there. But I really appreciate how in the world we make in particular, this book, I think, really delves into that aspect of society, because we saw bits and pieces of it within the city we became, right? But the main plot of the city we became was establishing the fact that not only are there cities in the world that have these entities, and that multiple people from different areas can have these abilities and these powers, and understanding what that is, and understanding who this white lady is and what she's done and what her end game is and what she's looking to do. But the world we make really took that a step further and looked at more society and how that is perpetuating things, and how it's not necessarily somebody from a puppet master of any kind. It can be ingrained in society, but how it is very easy for one person to start a kind of revolution or start a kind of movement that can be either positive or negative, depending on the situation. But in this case, being more negative, where it is going to be something that is going to be harmful, and how very easily that can affect, how a society works and how a community is. Because if there is someone that is looking to take over everything, for instance, an idea like gentrification, of, where people have come into various neighborhoods of color and white people specifically, and how they've taken over it, and they've pushed out the people that had been living there previously because they want the space that they're in for whatever reason, whatever gain it is that they're looking for. This is the world we make, is a story where we've got the setup. Now this is like what we're fighting against. This is like where the fight actually is. I think in a lot of ways, to kind of like wrap up some of my thoughts on this series as a whole, this duology, the way that I see this is that The City We Became is more of the prequel of sorts, naturally being like the first book in the duology, but it's more of the prequel in world building that we needed to be able to see the actual plot develop in the world we make. The world we make was like the actual battling against the bad guy. But The City We Became was more of the world building and the establishing of what is going on in this world, and establishing the characters and how they fit into this puzzle, and how they work with each other, and what it is about them that represents the different aspects of New York City. Manny with Manhattan, Brooklyn with Brooklyn, Bronca with the Bronx, what is her name? I can never remember how to pronounce her name. The Indian girl that's basically Queens. I think of her as Queens. I can't ever remember what her name is. But then Island with Staten Island, and how all of them come together, or how they are so different in different aspects and how they represent their specific boroughs. I mean, you've got Bronca, who is the artistic one. She is the art director. She is the one that represents the Bronx, which is very art-based, and it also has a lot of fire around her. Bronx people, the stereotype that I've heard is that people from the Bronx are people you do not want to mess with. They will fuck you up. And then same kind of thing with Brooklyn. Brooklyn is kind of that area where, it's described as being this place where you don't mess with them. You want to fight, you're going to get a fight. And this is more in the line specifically with the way that Brooklyn, the character, is set up as being someone that is looking to fight for the communities. It's a very, heavy community kind of based thing, of especially communities of color. And then you have Manny, Manhattan, that kind of more, not uppity per se, but that very kind of more primer, very more sophisticated kind of idea. But Manny also has no memory of anything. Like, obviously we see that Manny has no memory whatsoever of anything, but Manhattan being the place where most people consider to be the head of New York City. He is the leader of this group because he represents essentially the biggest aspect of New York City, which is Manhattan. This is where a lot of the different aspects of New York City are in, the different places like Times Square and, Central Park and all these different things. Manhattan is like that big aspect of New York. Staten Island with Island, where again, it is that very kind of Republic-esque, very family-oriented, very white-washed kind of area. And then you have Queens, which is more of that academic side of things. And, she represents too the people that come to this country to, do things here and make their dreams a reality, but how they are ostracized because, especially if they are a person of color, how they are not from this country. And people in this country that are against immigration, they view them as outsiders, and how they view them as, these parasites that are just coming in and taking over everything. Whereas in reality, they're just looking to actually make their dreams a reality, just like anybody else that would move to a different country would do. It's a very interesting way of looking at the way the world is through one specific city, and how every city that we come across in any literature or anywhere, any way that you travel, when you travel to a new place, you see different aspects of it through the different communities. I know, like when I went to California, for instance, when I went to Los Angeles, there was very distinct aspects, even in just a 5-mile radius of where I was. There were so many different aspects of the community that I could see that amazed me. It amazed me so much that it was something that you could physically see and you could hear the differences in the different communities that were in the same space, and how they were painting this beautiful picture of how, different communities can come together and live in the same area and create such a vibrant, very lively area. And I love that you got that feeling about New York City in this duology. You got the feeling of how vibrant and lively the city is, and how these characters came so much to life to really exemplify the different aspects. And that is one thing that I've loved seeing, is that people that are from New York who have read this book have said that it is something that they absolutely love and think best represents the city itself in the different boroughs that we explore in this. And I love too how the great cities, it's not just New York. You have London, Sao Paulo, Tokyo, Cairo, all these different cities. We get to see them briefly when Manny is going through and trying to gain people to, help them against the White Lady, because they've all fought her at some point in time. But how each of these cities is such a powerhouse in and of themselves. And that's because they are made up of so many different communities that make them the powerhouses that they are. And the entities themselves have so much power because they are the culmination of so many different kinds of people. And the way that their societies are built is so fascinating. It's just, this is by far, I think, my favorite series. Like I said at the beginning, I think that this series, it is truly, I think, a love letter to a city that N.K. Jemisin not only lives in, but loves. And I love that this duology showcases that. I love that we get to see, through the way that she's written this story, how much she loves it and how much she loves the different aspects of it, all the good, the bad, and the ugly. But how the good, bad, and the ugly are kind of things that you can't always escape from. And how it's not necessarily something that is inherently bad, but the things that are bad and ugly need to be addressed in order to change them to be good. Because you can't have a perfect world, really, ever. This idea of the utopia is not something that is attainable, because there are always going to be people who are going to view things differently than the next person. And I love that, again, the way that this ultimately ends is we don't get that utopia. We don't get that happily ever after. We don't get that everything is right as rain and nothing is ever going to be wrong again. We get the ending of, this is going to be an ongoing battle. This is not something that is one and done. This is not something that is easily remedied. This is something that is going to be constantly worked on. This is going to be something where there's always going to be something new to learn. And in Island's case in particular, there is something where she is going to have to learn a lot in order to really gain the trust of the people that she wants to be friends with and wants to build a community with. She's going to have to do a lot of self-searching and soul-searching and really discovery of herself and why she does certain things in order to gain the trust of the people that she wants to be a part of. It's just this series, it is something that I think whenever I talk to people about where to start with N.K. Jemisin, I think this is the series I will tell them to start with, because while it is not necessarily her most popular, it is, I think, the most important in understanding who she is as a writer and who she is as a person and what she is capable of doing and the things that she writes on. I think that this is a really good taste tester of the types of things that she writes, because we see these similar aspects brought up in all of her series to some extent. This idea of othering, this idea of, being made that you are not good enough to do something, even if you have the ability to showcase differently, and showcasing how you can be more than what people expect. And how in every society, like I said, there's this aspect of othering and the challenging of that, and the understanding that this othering is not something that is okay. And there's a lot of reasons as to why, obviously, but I think that in terms of a taste tester, the Great Cities duology, I think, is where I will tell people to start, because it just gives you the most basic idea of what N.K. Jemisin writes on. And if you don't like that, you are likely not going to like anything else that she writes, in my opinion. Now, I know there's a lot of people who will say, no, don't have them start with that. Have them start with the 5th season. It's one of her most popular works, yada, yada, yada. It's 3 Hugo Award winners, each book in the series. But I think that for a lot of people, especially that are new to her, it would make more sense to do something that is a little bit closer to home in some ways, and then build up to the more fantastical things of the 100,000 Kingdoms series and the Dreamblood duology and the 5th season series. I think that those are things that, unless you are like a, super hardcore fantasy reader, those are like, you can definitely start with those if you choose to. They're going to give you the same ideas of what she writes on in any capacity. That's why I started with that series, the 5th season, because I love fantasy and I heard that was her most popular series to start with, so I wanted to start with that. But I think for especially people who are not fantasy readers and are just looking to understand what it is about N.K. Jemisin that people love, and what is it that makes her such a popular author, especially in the fantasy genre, that is the Great Cities is definitely a place to start. I think it's a great place to start. I think it's especially you don't know anything about her, you don't read fantasy on a regular basis, this is a great place to go. But if you like your fantasy, by all means, start with the 5th season, the 100,000 Kingdoms. And if you like your graphic novels and you like Green Lantern specifically, what the heck is the name of it? Far Sector. I almost forgot the graphic novel. Good Lord. And that was one of my other favorites of hers. But like, if you like Green Lantern, you like comics, and you like graphic novels, Far Sector. Great. It's a great series. It's a great comic. It's a great character. Sojourner, still one of my favorite characters of all N.K. Jemisin's characters ever. But yeah, so that is basically all of my thoughts. A lot of it kind of centered around the same idea that within the Great Cities, there is this thing involving the isms and the phobias that we experience in society. And how, especially on a large scale in a large city like New York City, they can play into. I obviously gave The World We Make a 5 out of 5 stars. Absolutely loved it. Like I said, it is my favorite series out of everything we've read of hers. My favorite book still, though, being the 5th season. My favorite book of hers, like singular book, the 5th season. But The World We Make is definitely in the top 5, if not maybe the top like 2nd or 3rd position, essentially. It is so well done. It is such a beautiful story, and I think definitely a great sequel to The City We Became. And I'm very happy to have been able to read it and go through this entire experience, honestly, in the last year of reading N.K. Jemisin's work. I do want to thank everyone who has come in on the live shows and has participated in these live shows with me and talked about these books with me. Thank you to my friends Bree and Brandy and Adrian, who have either attempted or have, joined on the live shows with me and read the books. I appreciate you guys for, being on here with me and talking with me. I appreciate too Courtney, who I talked a little bit here and there about, especially with the 5th season series. I know that she didn't read everything that there was, but I appreciate that she made an attempt with reading the series, and I think that that is going to be something that I hold near and dear to my heart, because while maybe some people don't like it, the fact that there's an attempt made, there is, something to be gained from attempting the stories, that makes me happy. But thank you to everyone who joined in on this read-along, the very first read-along I ever did. I'm so proud of how I handled it. I know that not every live show is perfect. I missed a couple here and there, or like I was late to a couple, but I know that doesn't really matter. And at the end of the day, I'm just glad to have been able to make these great conversations with everybody and just really explore this author that I've wanted to read for a very long time, and managed to read all of her work to this day that there currently is, and enjoy every single aspect of it. Even the books I didn't like as much, I still enjoyed them extremely thoroughly. And I am excited for what's in store for this year, which, if you are not aware, I made an announcement in December of the read-along we are going to be doing over the course of 2024, which is going to be the Witcher series by Andrzej Sapkowski. And this is a very popular series, especially with how the TV show had came out on Netflix and how people really enjoyed that. There also is a video game series that there is based on The Witcher that is very, very closely tied with the stories that are in the books. So this month, what we are working on in the month of January, we are working on the first prequel story, which is over here on my little shelf thing. So give me 1 second, I'm gonna grab it. So we are working on the first prequel stories, which is like an optional read for a lot of people, but it is recommended to kind of get you established in the world and establish who Geralt, the character, is in the world before getting into the main series. And that is The Last Wish. Now, this is a fairly short book. It's, I think, less than 350 pages. It is a reread for me specifically because I've already read this book previously. And I really enjoyed it. The first time I read it, I gave it a 5 out of 5 stars because I loved all the stories. I loved the way that Geralt was represented. I think this really gives a great idea of who Geralt is and the things that he's able to do, and gives a lot of, I think, information about the other characters that are involved in his life as well. And it gives just enough of a glimpse for you to be like, okay, I want to know more about these people. I want to know more about Yennefer and about Ciri and all these different characters. And I am just really excited to go through this. Now, the Witcher series is not a 12-book series by any means. This is a read-along that is going to span until August because there are not enough books in this series to span the entire year of 2024. With that said, I am still going to, do my best to every single month leading up to that, reading one of these books every month. So like I said, in the month of January, we are going to be reading The Last Wish. If you don't have a copy of this, it's totally fine. But if you, oops, sorry, that's my phone. My mother is texting me. But what we are planning on doing is doing the live show very similarly to how we did the NK Jemisin ones, where we sit and we talk about, the book themselves, what we thought about it, what we thought about the characters, especially when we get to the main series of The Witcher. What exactly it is that we are excited about, what it is that we are liking, what it is that we are enjoying. Now, I wish I could do something where we could do then also a watch along with the Netflix series, but first of all, the Netflix series is not done. They are still working on it, even with the recasting of Geralt that was originally played by Henry Cavill, that is now being recasted. But also, I don't have the ability to, watch along with other people without getting copyrighted, or either, just I don't have a space where we could all, as a group, watch something together. I know that there's ways to do it, but I don't have the access to that, nor the time with my, various things that I'm doing. So the best that I'm going to be able to do is the live shows for The Last Wish. So the first live show that we're going to do for The Last Wish is going to be in February. It's going to be the first weekend of February, which is February 3rd. We're going to do that live show for the first book. And like I said, we're going to just talk about the book itself, what we thought of it, what people liked about it, what people didn't like about it, about the characters, the world, anything like that. And as it is now, the day that I'm, obviously doing this live show, I'm about 150 pages in. So I'm almost halfway through the book. And I'm just loving it as much as I did the first time, truthfully. But I will be discussing my thoughts on this in February. So we're going to do the live show Saturday, February 3rd, 2024, obviously, at about 8 p.m. Eastern Standard Time. Sorry, I think that was my iPad this time that went off. And we are going to just, talk about this stuff. I don't know whether or not I'm going to have co-hosts. It's going to depend on who's going to be available. If you would like to co-host with me, though, and if you would like to join in on the live show to talk about the books with me, DM me like on Instagram or anything like that, because I am more than happy to have people come and join me to talk about the books if they're interested in it and if they want to do so. But by no means do you guys have to. I'm perfectly fine also with doing it just like this, where I talk at you guys. So it is entirely up to you. But Thank you to those of you that are either here or watching the replay. I really appreciate you guys' time, and I hope that you enjoyed, first of all, the world we make, but I hope that you also enjoyed the read along of the Witcher series, because I think this is going to be a really fun series to read, especially since it'll knock off a series that I've been wanting to finish for a long time, that I've had for a very, very long time. I think we're going on like 4 or 5 years that I've had this series on my shelves that I've yet to actually finish. So anyway, so with that, I'm going to head out for tonight. So thank you guys so much for joining me today. If you guys joined in and you don't know me, my name is Gabby. I run the channel The Curious Owl. I do all kinds of different things on my channel, focus related. And so if you're interested and you would like to come hang out and join in on the live shows with me and get notified of when those happen, make sure to subscribe, follow me, whatever it is. I also have TikTok, Instagram. I have a witchy side business as well. I have an apothecary where I sell wax melts, candles, spell jars. I also do tarot and oracle readings. And all that information is linked basically in the description of any of my videos that I have on my channel. So if you're interested in that, by all means, please, check it out. Let me know what you think of anything that's there. Yeah, so that's basically it. So thank you guys so much for joining me today, and I will see all of you guys hopefully soon. Bye.